Hello, Agence Provocation. How can I help? Provocation Agency. Art is the only thing that I know that makes sense both in itself and to make change because it has no hierarchy, at least not intrinsically. I've been wanting to make change for a long time and rejected becoming an artist, thinking it was just a medium and not change in itself, thinking I needed to be politically active, not just do art. My desire, as well as the recognition of the need for change, was manifold, takes ages to explain, and ends up in an awkward personal space. Family matters, family disputes, oppressive childhood, injustice in childhood, things that aren't really structural or institutional, but more incidental. But I can't deny not having been affected by it and learning from it. So, how does one explain this background that's not obvious? I did equate my parents with a system, a structure, and hence the need for transformation and decolonization. But that's just something that makes sense to me, not necessarily to anybody else. There can be a sensitivity that comes from this situation endured and injustice looked, seen, experienced, considered, and transposed into other situations or seen in other structures. And then there are other examples that one may be sensitive to, and the biggest oppressor, which is the misunderstanding around race. A situation that's not comparable for awkward situations in the family can exist anywhere, but, but a desire for change that artists might be particularly interested in. And art then presented this opportunity of doing things without having to wait until one's own situation is understood, because that might be difficult. I am a foreigner as well, someone who's not expected to live here and speak from here and about here. Somebody like me who's apparently not been here long, even though I've been here more than 3 decades. Somebody who is too unknown to somebody like me who is confronted with the question, when are you going back? Somebody whose place is disputed, unexpected. So I couldn't actually just do politics. I didn't have permission to speak. So I did need a medium. And then there was art, which was expression and saying something. I actually started by writing performance poetry or poetry to start with, as a response to essays I had to write at uni, and I disagreed with what was being taught. So it was a resistance to start with, and then it continued from there, and that was my medium, became an unfolding medium. The good
And
thing about art, I
so
realized then,
now
is the freedom,
there's
the
nothing
total
else I could
absurdity
do. I
of
couldn't
being
not
somebody
think
like me who
between
hasn't been to art
involved
school,
setting one's
without
own art,
place,
that
who
I
hasn't made
couldn't
it in the
doing
system
one's
either,
between
be
locations.
for no reason, and art is the reason. So it gives us a voice and an agency. We have more agency, I think, when we do art. And so I think it's a great necessary force for change. So the only thing that makes sense and that I can do is art for change. Art also gives me hope that change could be more lasting, more widespread, and seeping through layers that might not reach otherwise. Art because it gives me a space I hope where I don't have to enter the system before making change. And change because the system is unethical, it's unsustainable, both environmentally and humanistically. If the system doesn't make sense, then where do we go to make sense? And I think art is that space where we can go to from where we have agency. This is a good place to increase our agency, to reach somewhere and play the agent provocateurs. So it's an existential thing, it's a freedom thing, it's a justice it's thing. It's an urgency. It's an emergency. It's a thing where we don't have to get frustrated, where we can all speak, where we can dialogue, where we can learn about each other's stories and not feel discrimination, where we can not have to live in fear. And so instead, we find space to play. And from play comes creativity and comes transgression of boundaries and finding new spaces that we might not have expected. Get rid of hierarchy. Art is about not having to do the hierarchy in which we so easily get immersed in and absorbed in the system. That's why the system is so toxic in a way and so frustrating, depressing, oppressing, limiting. Because it kind of penetrates, it wants to take over, control. It's about each of us and all of us together. What is that space? Where is that? Why do so many people in my situation ignore it and not see? Many people in my situation ignore it and not see. In my situation ignore it and not see. In my situation ignore it and not see. Hesitant for feeling guilty of not doing an ordinary job and being caught in this dilemma. It's about a new personal is political as well. I mean, I found that even the personal is political is very often a reverberation of the structural, but I still feel more incidental and as if I don't have a category. And without a category, it's even more difficult to speak unless you have something else. Something that's you and not you, more than you, and that is art. something that you make yourself and then you have it. Because what else do you have? That's both you and more than you. So art is a hybrid space, and you have an object that you make outside of you, or a poem which is outside of you, with which you can say something, that you can show, which can serve as your means of revolution, of contributing. And doesn't want to make it in the system anyway, but therefore cannot make change from within it because I'm not in it in terms of a job within it. I am on the sidelines with a purpose and have not had the courage either to go about as an artist feeling too um, own laws, creating one's own universe and speaking with it. Which means that it's ultimately enough to make change. Another kind of classification, art and change has value for me, just like